Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, dear all, and welcome to the webinar that will be discussing very important matters to do with women and girl empowerment in education in general, but in creative entrepreneurial education in particular. We run this program as part of a bigger regional program called Creative Spark, and there will be a series of webinars devoted to policy issues related to education reform. In Uzbekistan, we are delighted to work on this program in collaboration with the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education, with Higher Education Council, with El-Yurt Umidi Foundation, with all higher education institutions involved in the program and all their business partners, civil society partners together. And this webinar brings together policymakers, academic leaders, university rectors, enterprise specialists, researchers, again, heads of civil society organizations together to discuss and explore very important matters to do with education reform and to do with embedding creative education into education system. And today, not only we have got participants from all over Uzbekistan and from many UK universities, we have also invited participants from neighboring countries who are also involved in Creative Spark program. And this webinar is just part of our bigger program, and Rachel will be telling more about it, but it's dedicated to International Women's Day. So without further ado, I would like to ask the Chair of Higher Education Council, Uktam Pardevich Murzakov, to open the event and to say a few words about wider reforms in Uzbekistan. Thank you. Uktam Pardevich, söz sizga.
Good afternoon. Добрый день. Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli tadbir ishtirokchilari, xonimlar va janoblar. Avvalo, men mazkur muhim davra suhbatining tashkilotchilariga o'z minnatdorchiligimni va mazkur tadbirda qatnashishda mamnun ekanimdan bildirmoqchiman. Darhaqiqat, kun tartibidagi masala nafaqat alohida mamlakatlar, balki butun mintaqalar va dunyo miqyosida ham barqaror taraqqiyotga erishish yo'lidagi muhim masalalardan biridir. O'zbekistonda davlat va jamiyat hayoti rivojining barcha yo'nalishlarida olib borilayotgan keng qamrovli islohotlar doirasida mazkur masalaga ham davlat siyosati darajasida alohida e'tibor qaratilmoqda. Men bugun O'zbekistonda xotin-qizlarga, ularning jamiyati hayoti va iqtisodiyotning turli sohalarida faol ishtirok etishlari uchun yaratilgan imkoniyatlar to'g'risida qisqacha to'xtab o'tmoqchiman. Aslida mamlakatimizda ayolga bo'lgan munosabat o'z tarixiy ildizlarga ega. Ajdodlarimiz doimo ayollarni qadrlashga, ularga nisbatan hurmat va izzatda bo'lishga da'vat etishgan va bu muhim qadriyat hozir ham davom etib kelmoqda. Jumladan O'zbekiston Respublika Prezidentining 2020 yil 29 dekabrda Oliy Majlisga murojaatnomasida ilgari surilgan muhim masalalardan biri xotin-qizlarning jamiyat hayotidagi o'rni va nufuzini oshirish, ularga yangi imkoniyatlar yaratish masalalariga alohida urg'u berildi. Mamlakat rahbari, hukumat va parlament tomonidan xotin-qizlarning ijtimoiy siyosiy faolligini oshirish, salomatligini muhofaza qilish, intilishi va tashabbuskorligini qo'llab-quvvatlash, ularga munosib mehnat va yashash sharoitlarini yaratish bo'yicha so'nggi 5 yilda, e'tibor beringlar bu raqamga, 24 ta me'yoriy hujjatlar qabul qilindi. Men bu hujjatlar to'g'risida to'xtab o'tmoqchi emasman, chunki mana juda salohiyatli bizda tarkib bugungi yig'ilishimizda ko'rib turibman, deputatlar qatnashyapti. Doron Husniddinni ko'ryapman. Demak, Xalda Hafizovna juda faol ayollarimizdan. Shuning uchun men buni takrorlamayman, balki bularda chiqishida bu masala alohida unga urg'u berilar. Bugungi kunda O'zbekistonda viloyatlar kesimida xotin-qizlar tadbirkorlik markazlarini tashkil etilgan bo'lib, ulardan biznes inkubator shaklida xotin-qizlarning tadbirkorlik, hunarmandlik faoliyatini, shu jumladan oilaviy tadbirkorlik faoliyatini rivojlantirishga ko'maklashish maqsadida xotin-qizlarni va oilani qo'llab-quvvatlash bo'yicha davlatning maqsadli jamg'armasi mablag'lari hisobidan ish faoliyati olib borilmoqda. Shuningdek, bir qator banklarimizdan ular tomonidan ajratilgan 100 milliard so'm miqdoridagi kredit mablag'lari xotin-qizlari va oilalarni qo'llab-quvvatlash davlat maqsadli jamg'armasining manbai bo'lib xizmat qilmoqda. O'zbekiston Respublikasining 2030-yilgacha gender tenglikni oshirish strategik konsepsiyasida ham ayollarning jamiyatdagi ishtirokini ta'minlash va rahbar lavozimlariga qo'yish maqsadida zaxira kadrlar tayyorlash masalasi ilgari surilgan. Bugungi kunda O'zbekiston aholisining 51%dan ziyodrog'i demak tashkil etadi ayollar. Jumladan mana bir necha raqamlarni sizlarga aytmoqchiman. Ayollar parlamentning yuqori palatasida, ya'ni senatda 30%ni, parlamentning quyi palatasida deputatlarning 32%ni, mahalliy kengashlarda deputatlarning 25%, qolaversa Oliy va o'rta maxsus ta'lim vazirligi tizimida mehnat qilayotgan xodimlarning 41%ni tashkil etadi. Shuningdek, respublikada 7 nafar O'zbekiston Fanlar akademiyasining akademigi, 600 ga yaqin fan doktorlari, 2000 dan ortiq fan nomzodlari va falsafa doktorlari xizmat qilmoqda. 2 nafar rektor, 16 nafar prorektorlar va 50 nafar fakultet dekanlari lavozimlarida ayollarimiz rahbarlik qilib kelmoqda. Bugungi kunda oliy ta'lim muassasalarida tahsil olayotgan talabalarning 46% qizlarimizdan iborat. Ulardan 22% oilali bo'lib, 9% darslardan bo'sh vaqtida ham o'qiydi, ham ishlaydi. Buning uchun oliy ta'lim muassasalari tomonidan imkon qadar sharoit yaratib berilmoqda. Respublika bo'yicha sohalar kesimida 3 yillik ma'lumotning tahliliga ko'ra, yildan yilga talaba qizlar ulushi kirayotgan, oliy ta'limga kirayotgan talabalarimizning qizlar ulushi ortib bormoqda. Mana masalan, 2020-yil talaba qizlarining ulushining 2017-yilga nisbatan o'sish ko'rsatkichlari 18% ni tashkil etdi. O'zbekiston Respublikasi Prezidenti tashabbuslari bilan 2020-21 o'quv yilidan boshlab respublika oliy ta'lim muassasalariga talabalikka qabul qilishda qizlar uchun alohida davlat grantlari asosida qabul ko'rsatkichi ajratildi. Men bilmayman, lekin bironta mamlakatda bunaqa narsa bo'lganini men shu kungacha har holda eshitganim yo'q. Tizimda rahbar ayollarning sonini oshirish maqsadida, tizim deganda men albatta oliy va o'rta maxsus ta'lim tizimini ko'zda tutyapman. Shu demak tizimni ayollar sonini oshirish maqsadida 154 nafar ziyod faol xotin-qizlardan iborat kadrlar zaxirasi shakllantirildi. Ularni rahbarlik lavozimiga tayyorlash bo'yicha Davlat boshqaruv akademiyasi bilan o'quvlar tashkil etish rejalashtirilgan. Shu bilan birga buni ham ta'kidlash lozim, bu yo'nalishda natijalar va bajarilgan ishlar hali yetarli emas. Mavjud salohiyat to'liq ishga hali solinmagan. Mamlakatda bu yo'nalishda jumladan xotin-qizlarning kreativ tadbirkorlik ta'limi yo'nalishida imkoniyatlarini yanada kengaytirish bo'yicha katta rejalarimiz va oldimizda qo'yilgan vazifalarimiz bor. Men aminman, aynan bugungi davlat suhbatida o'xshash platformalar mazkur yo'nalishdagi natijalarni, bu boradagi jumladan salohiyatni rivojlantirish yo'nalishidagi samarali mexanizmlar sifatida xizmat qiladi. So'zimning yakunida barchangizga e'tiboringiz va faolligingiz uchun minnatdorchilik bildirmoqchiman. Ishonamanki, mazkur davra suhbati kabi platformalarda umumiy maqsad yo'lida hamkorligimizning asosiy yo'nalishlari, alohida hujjatlarni muhokama qilamiz. Aniq konkret takliflar ishlab chiqamiz va eng maqbul hamkorlik yo'llarini tanlab olishga erishamiz degan umiddaman. Hurmatli anjuman qatnashchilari, mehmonlar, fursatdan foydalanib sizlarga Toshkent irrigatsiya va qishloq xo'jaligini mexanizatsiyalash institutida qator hamkorlar bilan birgalikda joriy yil 2-3 mart kunlari, ya'ni keyingi haftada birinchi marta respublikada, birinchi xalqaro yangilanayotgan O'zbekistonda xotin-qizlarning ilm-fan taraqqiyotidagi roli va gender tengligi mavzusidagi ilmiy amaliy anjuman o'tkazayotganimizni yana bir bor eslatib o'taman va barchalaringizni taklif qilib qolaman. E'tiborlaringiz uchun yana bir marta barchalaringizga rahmat, sog' bo'linglar.
Katta rahmat, Oktam Pardayevich. Thank you very much, Rector, for outlining all reforms that are taking place in Uzbekistan and giving us some statistics, which is very, very useful for us and for our discussion today. So thank you very much. And as I mentioned, one of major partners on our program here in Uzbekistan is the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialized Education. And I'm delighted to introduce Adham Khudaykulov, who is Head of Innovation and Research under the Ministry of Higher and Specialized Education. Over to you, Adham. You are on mute.
Oh, extremely sorry. Thank you very much indeed for a nice introduction and giving me a floor. Good afternoon, dear Professor Umurzakov, Your Excellency, Team Tala, Director Rachel Ireland, and other distinguished colleagues and friends. Improving women's educational levels has a clear and unprecedented impact on the social and economic prospects of the entire community. There are numerous studies have demonstrated a strong correlation between improved women's education and the socio-economic development at large. In our country, given these ideas, over the last years, a large-scale works has been carried out to ensure the rights and interests of the women, to realize their abilities and potential, to turn them into an equal, active, and creative members of the society. So, although there are some repetitions, I apologize for this. Let me highlight a couple of statistics here. Currently, over 40% of employees in the system of higher and secondary specialized education are women, and the number is ever increasing. Women's involvement in scientific research is also growing. At the moment, there are about 500 Doctor of Sciences and more than 2,000 candidate of sciences, and around 650 PhDs are working at the higher educational institutions. Women are also active in the university management systems. For instance, as I already mentioned by the Professor Umurzakov, there are 2 rectors, over 37 vice rectors, and 51 deans of faculty in schools. All higher educational institutions, as well as professional colleges, have women's public councils, which are responsible for resolving women's issues at the institutional level. Moreover, 46% of the university students are girls, and their share is growing year from year. For example, the number of female students in 2020 increased by 18% compared to 2017. in terms of the subjects, the humanities, the girls in humanities have increased by 14%. Social sciences and law, 11 and 9%. Engineering, which is quite rare trend in the world of education. So we can see the 8% of increase in engineering here and physics. Agriculture and water management, 13%. Medicine, 17%, and so forth. Also remarkable that starting from 2020 and 21 academic year, the enrollment rate for girls in higher educational institutions will be seriously increased by way of providing special state scholarships. These scholarships are exclusively for women. Of course, there are various other policy initiatives of the government of Uzbekistan, but given the shortage of my time, let me stop my speech here, and I will hopefully elaborate on them later on. And many thanks indeed for organizing such a wonderful event, and I really look forward to hearing a number of interesting scholarly contributions to the discussions. And I wish you all the success.
Thank you very much, Adham, for your very useful introduction and some additional statistics and additional views on reforms and changes that are taking place in Uzbekistan. And of course, during our discussion, you're welcome to contribute and to share some further views, especially from your research background. Thank you. And as I said, another partner is El-Yurt Umidi Foundation, and I'm very, very happy to give a floor to the Deputy Director of El-Yurt Umidi Foundation, Odiljon Satarov. Over to you, Odiljon.
El-Yurt Umidi выражаю благодарность за сотрудничество в проведении мероприятий на тему расширения возможностей женщин и девушек в сфере креативного образования.
We can't hear you well, Odiljon. We can't hear you well. Can you speak up a bit?
От имени фонда. Слышно, да? Да?
Может быть, поближе микрофон?
Voice?
Да.
Voice. It's okay?
Да, yes.
Sorry. От имени фонда El-Yurt Umidi выражаю благодарность за сотрудничество в области образования и проведения мероприятий на тему расширения возможностей женщин и девушек в сфере креативного образования и креативных индустрий, организованных в партнерстве с Британским советом при участии Министерства высшего и среднеспециального образования Республики Узбекистан. Необходимо отметить, что в послании Маджлису президент Республики Узбекистан Шавкат Мирзиёев заявил, что одним из приоритетов наших реформ является дальнейшее повышение роли женщин в государственном и общественном управлении. В качестве следующего шага в повышении роли и статуса женщин в обществе, создание для них новых возможностей, президентом предложено образовать Республиканский общественный женский совет, в который войдут активные и инициативные женщины, имеющие жизненный опыт и хорошо знающие проблемы женщин. На сегодняшний день в Узбекистане во всех сферах министерств и ведомств активно трудятся женщины наравне с мужчинами. В последнее время из числа женщин назначаются хакимы районов, ректора университетов, министры и заместители министерств. Активность проявляется в научной среде, защита диссертаций и получение степени докторов наук являются явными примерами. И, конечно, фонд El-Yurt Umidi тоже заинтересован, когда объявляет свои стипендиальные программы, чтобы обращать внимание на гендерное равенство и заинтересованно направлять наших девушек-стипендиатов для обучения в зарубежные страны. И я уверен, что данный вебинар будет способствовать расширению возможностей женщин и девушек в сфере креативного образования, и креативных индустрий в Узбекистане. Также даст новый импульс для разработок креативных идей. Желаю удачи работы в вебинаре и благодарю за внимание. Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Adil John, for your very warm welcome. And now I would like to give a floor to Her Majesty's Ambassador, Tim Torlott, to say a few words about UK experience in this area, and also how the embassy can support collaboration between UK and Uzbekistan in this very important area. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Jamilia, and all your colleagues from the British Council. Greetings to Uktam Razakov, to Adham Duchkolov, Odiljon Satarov, who are our great partners in the Higher Education Council, the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Specialised Education, and El-Yurt Umidi. And it's fantastic to see a huge audience of participants from all sorts of different backgrounds, from Uzbekistan and elsewhere in the region, taking part in this important discussion. It's important for two reasons. It's important because it's focusing on women, and it's important because it's focusing on the creative industries. And I'd like to say a little bit about both of those. I think at the 2015 UN Summit on Sustainable Development, world leaders adopted the Agenda for Sustainable Development, including 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Women's equality is a standalone goal, and the mainstreaming of gender and inclusion is a key feature of every single other goal, and that is a major achievement for the international community. The work we do in the embassy with women, that the British Council does with women, is fundamentally important to us here. And that's no more so true than in the creative economy. As the Creative Spark programme has highlighted on a number of occasions, the creative economy is one of the fastest growing, most dynamic sectors in the world's economy. In Britain, for example, 1 in 8 UK businesses is a creative business, and jobs in the creative sector are growing at 3 times the speed of other sectors in the economy. We've seen significant progress in Britain in many areas of women's equality. We see it in women's involvement in the economy and in business, in academic achievements, in their success in leadership roles. British law and policy on women's equality are regarded as a beacon of good practice internationally. And we have really effective bodies in place to monitor and enforce compliance with the law, as well as to offer guidance and support. But like all countries in the world, there's still an awful lot that we could be doing. And that's true in the creative sector too. A recent report that I was reading, preparing for today, highlighted that more women than men in Britain study creative arts subjects at university. But of those, a smaller proportion go into creative jobs after graduation. In fact, according to the British government, the creative economy employs a lower proportion of women than the wider UK economy, with only 30% of jobs, 37% of jobs in the creative industries filled by women, compared to 47% in the UK as a whole. And only 1 in 10 creative directors at senior levels in UK companies are women. So there's still much more we could do in the creative industries. And we are committed to working closely globally and in the UK in a number of really important areas. We're looking at levelling up the rights of women and girls across the UK. For that, we need partnerships between government, civil society, business and the media to change the culture and the social norms that underpin gender inequality. We need strong and vibrant women's movement working in partnership with government and with business. In all of this analytical work, world-class statistics are vitally important. And we can't do this on our own. We need to be working internationally on gender equality issues. And in that, we really appreciate, we strongly value the power of international collaboration and the role that the British Council plays in exchanging knowledge to build the understanding of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls worldwide. As Uktam Razakov and Odiljon have mentioned, strengthening the role of women in society, business and public administration in Uzbekistan is a presidential priority. He mentioned it, President Mirziyoyev mentioned it in his speech to Parliament, as others have mentioned at the end of last year. He emphasized it again this week in his speech at the UN Human Rights Council. It's great, as Uktam again said, that the government have allocated more than £1 trillion to support women's business projects and to address wider gender issues. There are additional state grants for girls and women. So it's fantastic that in Uzbekistan, there's really strong leadership, not just from the president. The chair of the Senate, Tanzila Narbayeva, has also been a champion of women's rights and empowerment of women here. So there's a really strong leadership, and there's a strong positive policy framework with great initiatives for empowering women and girls. And there is increasingly funding here as well, from government, the private sector, and of course from international partners. It's an important part of what we, the international financial institutions, and other governments are doing together here. But civil society to support this progress is still scarce, and it lacks power. The tertiary education sector, despite what others have said, is still underdeveloped in Uzbekistan in the humanities, and particularly in the creative industries. It's surprising for an education sector that is so vocationally focused that one of the most vibrant sectors of the economy is still so underdeveloped in the university system here. And as always with change, and this is true of the UK as well, the slowest and most difficult bit of transformation of reform is changing culture, changing long entrenched attitudes and traditions, which sometimes touch on really sensitive issues around religion and belief, for example. You also need to change attitudes of men. To get to reform, to empower women, you need to include the men. Part of what we need to do in the work that we do as an embassy will be to work with like-minded men and not such like-minded men to help the transformation to take place. All of those issues I hope will be an important part of today's discussion. So in conclusion, I hope this will be a really productive workshop identifying key steps to empower women and girls in education, in the creative industries, through international collaboration and exchange of knowledge and ideas. I wish you every success and look forward to listening to the discussion. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And of course, the key part of the British Council program is women and girl empowerment. And I'm delighted to give the floor to our country director, Rachel Ireland, to say a few words. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Jamilia. Assalamu alaikum, dobra den. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rachel, the British Council's country director in Uzbekistan, and it's such a pleasure to contribute to the opening comments of this policy dialogue under our Creative Spark programme on women and girls empowerment in creative education and the creative industries. And once again, I'd like to echo my thanks to our wonderful partners at the Ministry of Higher and Secondary Education at El-Yurt Umidi Foundation, the Higher Education Council, and of course all our Uzbek and UK partners here today. It's fantastic to see so many people, not just all across Uzbekistan, but from other parts of the region as well. And today's speakers, women and men. So thank you to all of you. It is, of course, a theme which is very close to my heart personally, as well as professionally. The conference today will explore how our education institutions can best prepare girls for work, empower and inspire them, help them develop skills to manage underlying stereotypes, all of which will support equal numbers of women to men in leadership positions and indeed all aspects of public life. I know that we all share this vision. On a personal level, working together to find meaningful answers to these questions that work equally well across different cultures is something that I am passionate about. I spent much of my childhood living abroad and was educated in 5 different schools in 4 different countries, an education that spanned a distance of 14,000 miles. I checked yesterday. You can imagine then how perplexed some of the university professors in the UK were when I attended an interview for a university place. But there were some who saw my potential and the different but valid perspectives that I would bring to university life and to the development of my own education and career. I was the first woman in my family to get a university degree. The British Council's mission, as many of you know, in the 110 countries and territories in which we work, are very much in line with my own passion. Making connections through education, through culture, and other programs which support, for example, women and girls' empowerment. I believe through this work and approach, we can change the world, address inequalities, and harness the full potential of all people. As a cultural relations organisation, the British Council believes in building meaningful, enduring, and respectful relationships across different cultures. And we cannot do this without a strong commitment to equality, diversity, and inclusion, and by trying to make sure that promoting equality, diversity, and inclusion is central to everything we do. It runs through much of our work around the world and is embedded into our programs, projects, and events. And our goal through developing inclusive programs is that we bring together people with different experiences and backgrounds, and as the ambassador said, women and men and their perspectives. And we hold ourselves to account and track our progress with tools such as the British Council's Diversity Assessment Framework. As part of this commitment, we also take a holistic approach to gender-balanced learning and to empower women and girls across our portfolio in Uzbekistan. Achieving better gender equality is crucial to creating an inclusive, open, and prosperous society. And we contribute to this agenda by creating opportunities for dialogue to influence educational reforms that benefit women and girls. We work with partners to promote access and opportunity for women and girls, and to build the skills and confidence to achieve their potential and have more influence over decisions that affect their lives. As Jamilia mentioned, this is one of a number of events that the British Council is involved in the lead up to International Women's Day on the 8th of March, just a week and a bit away. And it's a really important discussion, which I know will also lead to concrete and positive action. Incidentally, I'm also the first female director of the British Council here in Uzbekistan, but I do look forward to a time when women cease to become the first at this or the first at that. And instead, no one is surprised when a woman is promoted into the top job, because inequalities and damaging stereotypes no longer exist, and women are viewed as equals in equal numbers in all areas of life. So my very best to all of you for a fruitful and inspiring discussion, and a commitment to continue the discussion long after this policy dialogue ends and we return to our homes and different places of work. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jamilia.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for this inspiring speech. And thank you all participants of our opening plenary discussion, because all your contributions are an excellent introduction to the discussion today. And we have a team of fantastic panelists today who will share their experience with you, and I'm sure we will explore even more themes for further discussions, because this is such an important theme for the society and for education. So before I hand over to Natasha Try, who will be facilitating the main part of our discussion, I would like to say that during the webinar, we will have some opinion polls being run. So you will see some announcements on the screen, and also you will see the link to the survey in the chat box. I also encourage all of you to leave your questions in the chat box, because after the discussion, we will be dealing with your questions. Possibly we will deal with some of them, but others we will keep for our further discussions and webinars. So over to you, Natasha.
Hi, and thank you so much, Jamilia. So before we begin, I'd like to put a question to the audience. And that question is, can you name a female leader or a role model, a high-profile individual that's working in technology? If you could pop that in the chat box, if you can think of anyone. Now, there's a reason I ask this. The reason is only 22% of students can name a famous female working in technology, whereas 2/3 can name a famous male. So somebody that I look up to is Ada Lovelace. Oh, we've got a few names coming through there, which is fantastic. So although there's been a rise in representation of women in the creative and digital industries in the UK, only 11% of creative directors are women, as His Excellency highlighted, and it shows there is still some way to go. So assalamu alaikum, my name is Natasha Triai. I'm enterprise educator at London Met University, and I've been working with the British Council in Uzbekistan since 2018. A very warm welcome to you as an audience, and thank you so much for sharing this space with us to discuss a really important topic. And panelists, we are looking forward to you sharing your experiences. Before we begin, could you actually all say your names and which organisation you're representing today? If you want to unmute yourselves.
Hello, my name's Sarah Ann Kennedy Parr, and I'm representing the University of Central Lancashire. Hello, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kate Tetley, and I'm the International Manager for People First International. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Claire Seaman. I'm from Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh, and we've been working with Silk Road International in Samarkand for some time, and I'm a Professor of Enterprise.
I'm Sian, I'm from Goldsmiths, University of London. I'm academic lead for Enterprise, and it's great to be part of this whole community that has been created. Thanks, British Council.
Thank you, Sian.
Hello, I'm Marta Gasparin. I am Associate Professor in Innovation Design Management at the University of Leicester, and I am the Business Engagement Lead for the university.
Thank you. And I believe we've got two representatives from Uzbekistan with us as well, Khalida and Dilarom. So welcome to you all, and thank you so much for sharing. Now, the empowerment of women is a huge topic that impacts on us all, and we are so honoured to create this panel today, which is going to share with you what we know and personal experiences, and at the end we'll answer any questions that you might have, and also to provide action points in moving forwards. So the discussion today will last around 40 to 45 minutes. I'll summarise the core messages from the discussion and then pass back to Jamilia, who will conclude the session with steps to be taken. We'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end, I do believe. So please feel free to post your comments in the chat box, express your opinions. They're all really valid, but we'll leave direct questions until the end of the session. And as Jamilia answered, mentioned, there's going to be a feedback form. And the purpose of this is to really improve on the sessions that we deliver and understand what priority topics are to you. So we would really value your input with that. So looking at the journey that's led us here to our discussion today. So during our policy discussion in Uzbekistan last February, which feels like years ago now, we identified key priority areas at policy level that the British Council Creative Spark programme would commit to address this year. And this included creative entrepreneurial education, create entrepreneurial universities, and lastly, the empowerment of women in creative enterprise education, but more broadly within society. So to begin to address the topic of women empowerment, Creative Spark held discussions at the project level and also conducted focus groups with local female entrepreneurs, with students, with higher education institutions to better understand how we can support girls and women to achieve their full potential. So to begin our discussion today, I'd like to ask you, Khalida, to share your personal career journey and what's helped you achieve the success you've had to date. I wonder if you can unmute yourself. Maybe you were having a bit of difficulty with that.
Да, я включила. Добрый день всем участникам сегодняшней встречи. Мне очень приятно видеть всех вас, и та проблема, которая сегодня поднимается, она, наверное, актуальна не только для Узбекистана, но и в целом мире, потому что роль женщины в обществе это имеет свои особенности, скажем так. Ну, я работаю проректором Ташкентского института текстильной и легкой промышленности и одновременно являюсь председателем Ассоциации дизайнеров Узбекистана. Ну, мой путь начинался с того, что при поступлении в текстильный институт у меня были немножко семейные проблемы, потому что папа очень хотел, чтобы я была врачом. Первый раз в жизни я не послушалась папу, пошла в текстильный, на дизайнера. И долгое время папа, конечно, был обижен, но когда я в Москве защитила кандидатскую диссертацию, мне папа сказал, что, наверное, ты правильно выбрала дорогу. А когда меня уже назначили заведующим кафедрой, мне было всего 31 год, у меня были 2 детей, и здесь он сказал, вообще молодец, давай в этом направлении работай. Я не считаю, что я очень стремилась сделать карьеру, потому что, работая в текстильном институте, заведующей кафедрой, естественно, потом деканом, сейчас я работаю проректором, я считаю, что это вполне нормальный путь женщины в сфере образования. И, конечно, было время, когда мне пришлось выбрать или семья, или карьера, когда меня назначали генеральным директором крупной швейной фабрики, генеральным директором дома модели республиканского, когда без моего ведома меня назначили заместителем министра легкой промышленности, и мне пришлось отказаться, потому что у меня уже было 3 детей. Но, тем не менее, я считаю, что сегодняшняя моя работа, творческая работа, которая параллельно идет с моей основной работой, это для меня большой подарок судьбы. И, конечно же, для достижения этой цели меня очень поддерживала моя семья, мои родители, родители моего мужа. И, конечно, очень большая поддержка была со стороны моего супруга, который понимал, который знал, чем я занимаюсь, и по возможности поддерживал во всех моих начинаниях. А творческая работа, она у меня началась буквально после аспирантуры, и те выставки, те фестивали, которые я организовывала, вы знаете, что последние годы у нас очень неплохо идет неделя моды, Ташкентская неделя моды, которая учреждена Палатой моды Италии, и уровень очень высокий. И я, читая тему сегодняшней нашей встречи, это креативная индустрия, креативное образование, я считаю, что я как раз попала в ногу со временем, и то, что мы сейчас делаем в нашем институте, это, конечно, является как бы достижением не только нашего института, но и в целом республики, потому что созданы очень хорошие условия для подготовки, для образования наших женщин. Вот сейчас у меня на столе лежит бумага, по которому мы в этом году организовывали прием в наш институт, и очень большое количество льгот для поступления наших студентов. Это и государственная премия Зульфия, которая была учреждена президентом. Это и олимпиады, которые проводит Академия художеств, это и возможность детям военнослужащих, дочерям военнослужащих поступать на льготных условиях. Это и дополнительные квоты, которые нам дал президент для девочек, и многие-многие льготы, которые были предоставлены нашим абитуриентам при поступлении в наш институт. А в нашем институте при обучении мы, конечно, стараемся своим студенткам помочь и в развитии их творчества, и самое главное, в трудоустройстве, потому что во время обучения мы их практически...
Sorry to cut you off. Thank you. That's so fantastic to hear. And maybe later we can return to the data. But thank you so much for sharing your personal journey and
Спасибо.
Thank you so much. And Sarah, perhaps we can move on to you now, and maybe you could actually share some of your personal career journey and what's helped you achieve the success. We've got a couple of minutes to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm currently the MA coordinator for animation, fashion, games and design at the University of Central Lancashire, and I run the MA animation course. But before that I was in industry, and I was a bit like Rachel. I was the first woman to have an animated show on Channel 4 aimed at teens, aimed at an older audience. It's still on 4 on demand now, and I also worked on a show called Peppa Pig. I wrote some of it, and I'm still the voice of Peppa Pig. I'm not Peppa Pig, Miss Rabbit. So I still carry on doing things like that. But I noticed when I was in my industry, and I think Tim is really right to say, we've still got quite a long way to go. And what happens often in the creative industries is that women end up being sort of doing all the artworking bit and not really taking the decisions. So when I was directing, I had an all-male crew, and I didn't really want an all-male crew. I wanted women working with me, but there just weren't any available at that time. It was quite a long time ago. And so that was quite stressful for me. And the expectations when we turn up at what's called a post-production house, where you get all your post-production done, so you get all your special effects and your sound sorted out. I would be with my producer, he was a man, and they would all automatically ask him what he wanted rather than asking me, because they just assumed I was a secretary, which was quite interesting. And it's still, and oddly, there hasn't really been that much change. There are still a few women, there are more women directors, but there are still very few. And there's lots of research done. I've done some research into it, and basically the problem is that that often merchandising companies are they don't feel they'll sell the same amount of toys as they would for girls as they would for boys. So it's all to do with economy, and when the further you go up the tree and the more money's around, the more it's more often that it's men. But what I say to my students is I always give them examples of women that have done really well. I prepare them for a journey out in the world that it won't be easy, and you will still have to fight, and you will have prejudices, but not to take any notice of them. And I was very lucky. I was supported by my husband, and I was supported by both my parents. You know, and I think they gave me a sense that I should believe in myself. And I think you really have to believe in yourself and what you really want to do. And that is a way of getting out there and making and doing something with your life that you really want to do. And you've only got one life. You might as well try and make it the best life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. You've touched a bit there on the initial stages of career development, I would say. And I'm wondering if you could actually explain how accessible are the professional progression pathways for young women leaving school?
I think there's often, I think there's a bit of a gap at careers officers at school sometimes. They aren't really aware of the creative industries full stop, actually. And they often go, you must do something like go and work as a nurse, or go, you know, they give them quite obvious vocational paths. And actually the creative industries are expanding, and they are bringing in quite a lot of money into the UK, even though they're not always appreciated as much as they should be, I don't think. But I think often it's have a goal that you want to go for, but set yourself small steps achievable goals that you think you can manage, and it will make you feel better and give you the confidence to go on to the next one. But I think having role models is really important. Seeing women out there who are actually doing things that you want to do, whether it's here or in other places, it's possible, and you just have to believe it is possible. But again, it's that thing of setting small achievable goals. I think that for everyone actually is the easiest way.
No, thank you so much for that input, and it's really some practical steps that we can take away as well. Thank you. Now, before we move on, Dilarom, could I actually ask you to share what your personal journey has been in your career? Can you unmute yourself? Trying to find where you are. Let's see. I can see you here. Thank you.
Ассаламу алейкум. Добрый день. Меня хорошо слышно, надеюсь. Знаете, действительно, за такое короткое время очень трудно рассказать о своем пути. Путь, конечно, очень интересный, но я хочу сказать, что мне повезло, конечно, в первую очередь с моими родителями. Мне повезло с бабушкой, дедушкой, которые были педагогами и прекрасно знали, как нужно воспитывать детей с детских лет. У меня был отец очень понимающий, ученый, и я благодарна тому, что мужская часть нашей семьи, она всегда поддерживала девушек наших, и девушки как-то у нас в семье были на первых ролях, и нам всегда говорилось: никогда не ограничивайтесь тем, что вы девочки. Вы в каких-то моментах даже можете быть лучше, чем мальчики. Поэтому как-то вот такое было воспитание, мне в этом повезло. И мне очень повезло с моими учителями и в школе, и в высшем учебном заведении, с руководителями.
Знаете, что текстильная промышленность, швейная промышленность в Узбекистане у нас идет очень интенсивное развитие, и те инновации, которые вносятся, инвестиции, которые у нас приносят на эти предприятия, они дают очень хорошие результаты. Естественно, на этих предприятиях нужны руководители. Руководители как технологи, руководители, конструктора, дизайнеры. И мы направляем наших студентов именно на лидерство, на то, чтобы они могли руководить, они могли бы не только выполнять свою непосредственную функцию, но и могли руководить хотя бы определенным количеством людей, которые работают под их руководством. И на сегодняшний день я знаю, что наши выпускники являются и главными конструкторами, и главными технологами. И чаще всего, конечно, наши выпускники, они организуют свои предприятия, небольшие предприятия, которые позволяют создать дополнительные рабочие места. Я считаю, что это уже лидерство, потому что руководить своей фирмой, своей фабрикой, своим цехом, это тоже, наверное, неплохо. Вот в таком направлении мы с ними работаем.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for that wonderful input. It's really good to hear about the work that's being done on a continual basis as well. Thank you for that. So we know that there are a number of networks in the UK, both in a professional and personal capacity, that have seen success in connecting women, inspiring women, and enabling women to flourish. And I know, Marta, you've got some experience in this area. Would you like to share a bit on your personal experience?
Yes, thank you very much. So first I would like to present what we are doing at the University of Leicester through the Innovation Hub and connecting with local entrepreneurs, and then talk a little bit about the Athena Swan Award that we are part of. So the University of Leicester has championed equality, both from a BMA perspective, but also from a women's perspective. And we have put in place a policy and a policy dialogue that is through the scheme of Citizens of Change. So currently at the university, we are working to design and implement policies and networks that are addressing issues that women are facing, but also supporting women. So one of the driving principles is to think holistically about women's empowerment, and to include in our thinking also the consequences that each policy might have on women. So what our starting point is to think, okay, what is the policy, the networking bank that can positively impact women, and what are the consequences of that? And our driving principle is that we want women to be enabled to self-determine, regardless the background, regardless the family situation. So to create networking opportunities and leadership positions that could explain and have also quite a few leadership roles and modeling roles. So from this perspective, we have in the leadership position quite a few women from a diverse background that are represented, both women in academia, working at university, and students and entrepreneurs at different stages of self-realization, their career progressions. So with the Innovation Hub, we have created some networks event. For example, the first one is micro project that are a set of events in enterprise and for entrepreneurs. And this is particular aim for academic women that would like to create a spin-out, would like to apply for outreaching opportunities, working with industry. So it's, as I would say, a networking and sort of a skill setting training that would enable women to be more confident in outreaching and set up enterprises through spin-off in academia. Then we have also skill co-working projects, and we are linked with an organization that is progressing each week with female funders. So the idea is to connect students and academics, but also startups with businesses in Leicester and in the region, with funders that are represented by women in order to improve access to finance and explain how women can also access different kind of finances. And finally, we have also the Innovation Fridays, where it's the last Friday of each month, we have networking events with academics and entrepreneurs. And as Her Majesty's Ambassador Tim Torlott suggested, we are doing this in integrating men in the discussion. So it's not just an event for women, but we are making sure that there is an equal representation of women and men in order to have a discussion from both sides and talk about problems and look together for solutions. And finally, also, we are working at the policy level with the primary education in order that also the early, the 6 and 7-year-old girls might be interested in STEM and have STEM support. And then we have a ranges of events like International Women's Day, Women's in Business Network, and a Menopause Cafe, where women that are entering menopause can formally discuss some issues and look together for policies events. And we, as I said, also we have applied for the Athena Swan, which is a national scheme that started in 2006. And through the Athena Swan, it's based on principle of equality and supporting women. And the universities are presented their best practices on how they are enabling women's voice to be heard without, of course, being patronizing, and address the pipelines of the gaps that they are present in the institution. And the universities are then submitting the proposal, and they are awarded the bronze, silver, or gold level for championing women's work.
Oh, that's fantastic, Martha. Thank you. I feel really inspired hearing all the different work you've been doing, and really well done to the Innovation Hub for facilitating that positive collaboration between different organisations. That's really fantastic to hear. Now, with successes of programmes, I would always say that there are some gaps. And I know, Claire, you've got some experience in this area. Can you identify where there might still be gaps remaining?
Thank you, Natasha. there are many things I could suggest. Marta has given us many, many good examples of things happening. The thing that has really helped us as a university to focus on what is happening and where we might find gaps, or as I think I would prefer to think of them, the next stages in our development, is actually the Athena Swan process, because what it has given us is a framework for the whole university, men, women, leaders rather, to look at what's happening and what we should do next. And we found that process incredibly helpful. So I think there certainly are lots more things that we could do, but it's actually the process by which we identify them that I think perhaps we should highlight. It's given us a route to move forward and to keep moving forward incrementally. And that I think is helpful in terms of longer term culture change, because we've heard once or twice about the importance of culture and how we build better culture. And it's those incremental steps as an organization that help you to do that.
Great, thank you so much, Claire. I really like how you've highlighted the need to identify changes, but it's almost like a continual process to be more sustainable rather than it just being a one-off occasion. It's a continual process that we go through. Thank you so much for that. It's really interesting. Now I'd like to turn our attention to universities, and I'm just wondering, Kate, can we look at good practice in higher education institutions that really develops a culture that empowers girls and women? And maybe sort of two questions, I suppose. How do we know it's working well? Are there measures in place? I know you've got experience in this area.
Well, thank you very much, Natasha, and thank you to all the speakers. People First International actually represents the industry. We're what's called a sector skills organisation in the UK, but we also work around the world, making sure that the education and training that's available meet the needs of industry and of employers. So as part of that role, we work very closely with universities, both in the UK but also in other countries as well. And one of the, I think my colleagues have mentioned a number of good practices already within their own universities, but if I just approach it from a more kind of generic point of view, what industries, economies, parents, individuals, they are all looking from education to get the right skills that they need to either go into the career of their choice, choose their career, or to set up their own business. And we're particularly interested within the Creative Spark program in entrepreneurship, and particularly female entrepreneurship, and what the skills are you need to do that. So for us, best practice within a university is where the education that's being provided is holistic. Somebody else mentioned this holistic approach. We're looking at where the content, the delivery, the assessment, and the quality assurance, and in quality assurance I include measurement. We're looking for that to give young women the right skill set, right skills profile to then go on and do what they want to do. And what we see is that universities that are able to do that in a holistic manner and offer young women the confidence and resilience that they need, as well as the technical skills and the competency in order to operate in the modern workplace. If they get all these skills, then it supports them into getting the right job or setting up their business in a way that meets what they're looking for. And for us, that is the important measure. So we have a number of programs that we run to help encourage that. We encourage universities to use the EntreComp framework, which is the European framework on entrepreneurship qualities and standards. We're working in Uzbekistan and putting together quality standards for education for the delivery of entrepreneurship education. We deliver programs in inclusive classrooms, but also on inclusive workplaces. So we do recognize that it's not just one way. It's not just the higher education, it's also industry that has to be working on providing inclusive opportunities, whether those are internships or work placements, they also need to be inclusive. So my final point on it is that the industry engagement that a university has is absolutely critical. They need to have those industry partnerships at every point along the way, and that's what makes the difference and offers a good practice for a university.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate, for that input. And I really appreciated you highlighting like the collective working together will really champion diversity, inclusion, improve education, develop these important skills. And thank you so much for sharing that. You actually brought up inclusion. So now as we kind of look at this topic of inclusion, Sarah, I'd like to ask you if there are any measures in place to support women with disabilities, and what's been your experience with regards to this?
Oh, I'm unmuted now. Yes, okay. Well, I think most universities will have something in place to ensure that people with disabilities, men and women, are treated fairly, and things are already in place to make sure that they get the same education regardless of what disability they have. I had a student once called Natalie who had cerebral palsy, and she wanted to come and do the animation course, and we supported her through that and gave her confidence. And actually she was most driven, she was always the person first to get up and do her presentation. She always did the most work. She always asked the most questions. She was so driven to make sure that she had a career. She went on and she did an MA, and then she now has a job at the BBC working as a researcher. So, you know, and basically the BBC is a publicly funded body, so they, you know, have a policy or a remit to ensure that they represent the people not only through their programs but through the people they employ. So, you know, she got a job there, and they wouldn't have given her a job if she couldn't do it. She was a really good student, and so we didn't see her disability as something stopping her. We saw her and her determination. We enabled her to join in as much as everyone else was, and she was great. Actually, she was a really lovely student. So I think it's important to not see somebody's disability, but to see past it and see who they are. And I think that is something that is part of most universities' policy. Actually, I think it's kind of, you know, the norm in the UK, really.
Yeah, it's viewing it's viewing people as individuals, equal, and we've all got potential to reach, and supporting one another to get there, regardless of anything else. What support do individuals need? And I think that's a really beautiful example that you've used in the instance of the BBC. Thank you so much for that. So I'd now like to turn to perhaps Dilarom, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think, in your opinion, needs to be done at a macro level to empower girls and women to grow, to start first of all, and then to grow businesses and really play an active role in their community? Can I put that to you, Dilarom?
Спасибо за вопрос. Ну, что нужно делать на макроуровне? Наверное, в первую очередь это государственная политика. Государственная политика, которая нацелена на поддержку женщин, на расширение их прав и возможностей. И здесь я должна сказать, что вот в последнее время, ну вот буквально, мы можем сказать, недавно, в 2019 году, мы приняли 2 закона. Один закон о гарантиях равных прав и возможностей женщин и мужчин, и другой закон по предупреждению насилия в отношении женщин. Но эти законы, я считаю, являются основой, правовой основой обеспечения гендерного равенства и вообще расширения прав и возможностей женщин. Конечно, в этом плане у нас ведется активная работа, создана комиссия по вопросам обеспечения гендерного равенства, комитет по вопросам женщин и гендерного равенства в Сенате Али-Маджлиса, общественный фонд по поддержке женщин и семьи. Свою деятельность сейчас ведет специально такой государственный орган новый, созданный Министерством по поддержке махалли и семьи, который имеет специальное подразделение, направленное на поддержку женщин. И, конечно, сейчас в каждой махалле, в районах ведутся работы по развитию предпринимательства среди женщин. И здесь нужно сказать, что за последнее время все-таки очень активно пошло кредитование, именно оказание финансовой поддержки для того, чтобы женщины могли заниматься предпринимательской деятельностью. И здесь я должна сказать, что недавно в послании президента было подчеркнуто, что необходимо в настоящий момент как-то развивать вопросы финансирования предпринимательства, женского предпринимательства. И в целях поддержки проекта в сфере бизнеса и устранения их проблем для женщин Народным банком на сегодняшний день внедрена новая система обучения женщин в сфере предпринимательства с разработкой типовых бизнес-планов и оказания им практической помощи в получении кредитов. И для этого из бюджета будут выделены средства на более 1 триллион сумм. Почему это нужно? Дело в том, что вот несколько лет тому назад, в 2018 году, я ездила по регионам, и я помню, когда мы старались развить вопросы семейного предпринимательства. И на местах было такое, что когда мы подходили к женщинам и обращались к ним, и хотели как-то получить от них определенные идеи для будущих бизнес-проектов, было такое, что вот одна женщина проявляет какой-то интерес. Например, она говорит, и вот я хочу развить тепличное хозяйство. И за ней сразу 3-4 женщины говорят, я тоже хочу развить тепличное хозяйство. И вот здесь все-таки это наша партия, либерально-демократическая партия, занялась такой деятельностью. Мы пришли к выводу, что все-таки для начала нашим женщинам недостает необходимых знаний и навыков. И вот в этом плане необходимо работать. И в последующем, конечно, наша партия тоже давала свои предложения, и в последующем на местах уже были организованы центры по развитию предпринимательства женщин, для того, чтобы их обучать, давать им эти навыки, эти знания. Но в то же время я хочу особо, мы, конечно, работаем над этим, делаем упор на то, что все-таки с первых шагов девочек еще в школах и вузах мы должны подготавливать к этой самостоятельной жизни, ведению экономической деятельности в будущем, потому что дать образование – это одно, а определиться им в жизни и быть успешными людьми, профессионалами – это уже другое. Если раньше мы говорили, вот первый период твоей жизни – это учеба, а потом это трудовая деятельность, сегодня уже все поменялась обстановка. И сегодня каждый день даже профессионал должен учиться, должен работать над своими профессиональными качествами, потому что мир не стоит на месте. Все буквально меняется. Сегодня, например, мы можем привести примером цифровизацию. И цифровизация, она тоже требует определенных навыков. И здесь, несмотря на то, мы говорим о креативном предпринимательстве, о креативных индустриях, больше это, наверное, сфера искусства, да? Но в то же время сегодня есть такие сферы, в которых каждый человек должен разбираться, а предприниматель тем более должен иметь и финансовые, и современные знания в финансово-банковской сфере, и в правовой сфере, и постоянно развитие. И поэтому думаем, что вот в этом направлении нам еще есть, предстоит очень много работать. Очень много работать предстоит. И мы сегодня, конечно, хорошие вроде тенденции, что девочки у нас как-то в по инженерным направлениям увеличилось процент девушек, да. Но с другой стороны, нужно сказать, что в будущем мы как-то должны даже не только в системе высшего образования, но и народного образования найти возможности поддержки, стимулирования именно образования девушек. Потому что я почему об этом говорю? Мы депутаты, мы на местах сталкиваемся со множеством проблем. И нужно сказать, что наряду с хорошими положительными тенденциями имеются и такие как бы беспокоящие нас тоже явления, над которыми нам предстоит работать, потому что все-таки семьи разные, и есть становление человека, в первую очередь, оно бывает в семье, и семьи все-таки разные, и от воспитания в семье многое зависит, и все-таки нужно сказать, что есть такие семьи, которые сегодня не очень-то внимательно относятся к образованию девушек. И вот в этом направлении я считаю, что нам необходимо работать и с институтом Махали, и действительно усилить наше взаимодействие, как выше сказал господин Тим Торлоу, с нашими неправительственными, негосударственными организациями. Именно институты гражданского общества здесь должны быть активными, активно сотрудничать и работать. А мы со своей стороны, конечно, парламент, мы намерены изучать международный опыт законодательный, который бы именно содействовал расширению прав и возможностей девушек, которые именно могли бы найти законодательные решения каким-то явлениям и проблемам, которые могут появиться в обществе. Вот в этом плане сегодня и работает межпарламентское взаимодействие, и мы сотрудничаем и с британскими организациями. Вот недавно у нас был диалог с Global Partnership Foundation, и тогда мы обсуждали вопросы гендерного равенства и рассматривали это из призмы защиты прав девушек, женщин. И в этом плане, конечно, нам предстоит очень много работы, и надеемся, что в рамках вашего проекта, вашей инициативы мы тоже для себя откроем много новых возможностей и будем работать в плане интеграции креативной индустрии, креативного предпринимательства в наши условия, и вместе с этим мы будем содействовать именно расширению прав и возможностей наших девушек и женщин. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you so much, Dilarom, for sharing this. And it's fantastic to hear how proactive Parliament in Uzbekistan are with initiatives, with funding opportunities, like new systems, and you're highlighting the importance of interacting and empowering young women, young girls, and seeing that journey all the way through. So I think it's so fantastic to hear that these discussions are underway. And I know, Claire, that you've had some experience with women in enterprise in Scotland. Do you want to just talk a little bit about your experience of this initiative?
Absolutely. One of the organisations I work with is an organisation called Women's Enterprise Scotland. It's community-led. It's founded, in a sense, it's a little similar to a charitable organisation. it creates networks of women to promote enterprise, and it is set up in such a way that it runs a cross-parliamentary group. So not a political group, but rather a group which pulls together and conducts research and feeds it directly into the policymakers within the Scottish Parliament. So in a sense, it is an informal and a formal supportive network, but it also has a direct influence on policy, and it puts people in touch with each other in terms of what needs to be done in the big picture, and also in terms of finding mentors and finding support in like-minded communities.
That's really fantastic. Thank you so much, Claire. Really great to hear in these different areas and different countries how we're all working and we're doing these initiatives to address women empowerment. It's fantastic, really fantastic. Been such a great discussion and hearing your experiences, your opinions. And Shan, I wondered if you had anything that you would like to contribute as we come to the end of the discussion today.
Thank you, Natasha. And it's such an honour to be able to listen to you all and hear how we're all addressing the issue of women's empowerment and girls' empowerment from different angles. And as Tim said at the beginning, in the UK, we've recognised there are still big problems. And I loved Rachel saying she wants the day to come when we no longer say that you're the first woman. That really rallied me. And it has made me reflect because as many of us, I have worked in, I love it when we call it industry. I never really know what that means. I've worked outside of academia before I worked inside academia. And some of the networks that I was part of, and I love Sarah Ann's comments throughout, were just people that I met that championed me or made me be who I should be. And I think that's the really inspiring thing that I hear. But on reflection, I think three things come to mind. One is that we know that more and more women and young girls are studying the creative industries, the arts, and yet we still see in the UK less and less leaders that are women. And so something is going wrong. One of my reflections around finance for enterprise is it always at the right stage for a woman's life? There are lots of incentives for financial incentives and awards for young women under the age of 30. Maybe that's not the right time for some women to be starting a business. So I would love to see finance for women, for everyone, to be at particular stages. And I know there was some research by my colleagues in East Africa that looked at if you funded women at later stages of development, they were more able to fly and overtake at that stage, rather than perhaps at times where maybe confidence is an issue, maybe having a child is an issue, lots of issues that mean that sometimes it takes us longer to get to that stage. That said, I love the example too of, I think it was Dilaram who said that you will go to an area and one woman will say, I'm thinking of doing this. And then you realize there's a network around it. And I think what I see is when I look at businesses that are succeeding globally, they are succeeding because of their skills in networks, and they're succeeding in their skills at building relationships, which are qualities that traditionally business schools have seen as soft or feminine. I don't know if that's true, but what I see is actually education is now catching up with networked ways of working, which is the way that I hear we have been working all the way through. And I've also known that women are really good at doing mutual loans of money to ensure that businesses are successful. So I suppose what I would reflect on is that there are so many ways that we have instinctively of supporting one another throughout generations that we should just carry on, but also amplify it. And this discussion is such an important part of amplification, so that perhaps other people catch up with us, which will then empower us. My last little reflection was around, how do we inspire people? And I was just thinking about, actually, so today's a significant day because my niece has gone into labour, and I know she's giving birth to another girl, and I've already bought her a set of books that are those little women books, the ones around Frida Kahlo, around women pilots. So let's also look at the material that we give our young girls, particularly Peppa Pig. Let's keep inspiring very young girls by showing them that women are leaders, that women can change the world and have and continue to. So I suppose that was my reflection, which is, let's do more at the younger age. Let's give finance throughout a woman's life. And also let's understand what is this real barrier to leadership at the top. And hopefully in 18 years, you'll be hearing from my new great niece doing whatever she's doing, but I'm sure she'll be happy. But thank you for letting me be part.
We will, Shan. We will, let's proclaim that. Thank you so much. That was really beautiful to hear your reflections. We really value that, which is just, I think that's just a perfect way to kind of come to the close of this discussion. So before I move on to the core messages that I've taken away from this discussion, I would like to pass to Jamilia. We'll do some Q&A right now for I think we've got a few questions. Is that right, Jamilia?
Yes, we have got some questions, and I will probably choose 3 and keep others for our further discussions. And the first one is how UK universities go about collecting and analyzing statistics related to women and girls' empowerment. How to identify the things that you need to measure that really matter. Isn't it a good question? Who wants to answer or to start?
I could chip in if that would be useful.
Thanks, Claire.
Certainly, 2 things I can tell you. One is that our human resources department within universities keep statistics on lots of what we would term protected characteristics. So characteristics of people, whether you're male or female, or other characteristics which form and are related to our equalities legislation. So the statistics are kept formally by HR, but over and above that, we have a process by which each big change that we make within the university, we go through a process of equality impact assessment. So we've just been through, for example, we have literally just finished the Research Excellence Framework for this cycle. And each stage, whether it's how you choose people to include, or how you select research, or how you reflect on the whole process overall, each of those has a separate equalities impact assessment, and there's a list of criteria that we are encouraged to think about.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think that's useful, and maybe one of the action points for us to share some of those, equality, diversity, assessment frameworks, and all the things that you do as part of REF for your university. The second question is related to what Rachel said in the beginning about gender balanced learning, and whether UK universities can share some of the key principles in curriculum design, in teaching, learning, assessment that are around gender balanced learning.
I'm happy to I'm happy to have a go, and I think in the spirit of honesty, it's also about we are all moving towards a better place around this. So some of the things that we're doing is absolutely we're reviewing our curriculum every year, every term, but particularly I think there are issues around examples that we give, making sure that those are balanced in terms of a range of characteristics, but particularly ensuring that we give inspiring and relevant role models, examples when we're teaching, and looking at the books that we refer people to. Sometimes you can look at a reading list and see that it's only been, that all the articles we're pointing to are written by men. And while we can understand that that was because of the privileges that men were given at particular points, we have to ourselves as academics take risks, which aren't big risks, of including alternative materials to ensure that reading lists plus examples and case studies reflect the gender balance of the society we live in. So I think it is about us constantly holding ourselves to account in that case, and also bringing in our alumni. We talked earlier about positive role models and case studies, ensuring that our alumni and our own networks that have helped us get to the positions we're in, that we open them up to our students.
Thank you very much, Sean. And probably the final question that I will ask is around education in the UK. And the question is, do UK universities offer degree programs around gender balanced learning or women empowerment or girls' education?
I think from the fact we've gone quiet, maybe not. Claire, I don't know.
There we go, I am unmuted. I'm struggling to think of a direct example. What I can think of, I'm not sure if it's a matter of terminology. Many of our programs have specific courses which address gender diversity, equality in a variety of ways. It doesn't necessarily tend to be a whole degree program, but it is an important component of many programs. And I'm not sure how much of that's terminology and how much is a real difference.
Thanks, Claire. And Sarah, you wanted to chip in as well on this?
Quickly.
You are on mute.
Okay, I'm unmuting. I'm supposed to start teaching in a minute, and so basically I'm going to have to go. But so it's really difficult timing for me. But yeah, people are trying to weave it in, and I think bibliographies, who you show as examples. I'll go through certain themes when showing films. So I think what is just making sure you weave it into whatever you're showing and showing examples of, and making sure that there's constant role models. I think that's the thing. That's what we tend to do. And I'm really sorry. I've really loved this discussion. It's been so brilliant. I'd love to stay, but I'm really going to have to go. So I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. It's brilliant. And I'll fill my form in. Right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Over to you, Natasha, to sum up our core messages for today.
Thank you so much, Jamilia. To summarise the core messages from today, fantastic discussions going on, really, really brilliant. And just to acknowledge the great work that's been done in both countries across the board. First of all, I would say that it's critical that the empowerment of girls and women remains a key priority in our countries, as there are still considerable barriers across the board, I'd say, that need to be overcome. And with the constant change in society, it's a priority that needs to be, as we've mentioned before, continually reviewed and improved. Second of all, I would say that there's a need for responsibility at every level to ensure appropriate and effective support is provided. And this means really working closely together at all levels, from local support or mentoring schemes, as we mentioned, peer-to-peer support, right up to governmental level. And I'd say collaboration is key, making sure girls and women are provided with this informal space, this safe space that enables the improvements to be sustained really effectively. And I would also say that as much as it's important to push for change at an organisational level, today we've heard lots of personal experiences and journeys, so we need to simultaneously consider how as individuals we can really affect change. So I would say, reflecting on what we've listened to today, maybe that means putting ourselves forward for speaking opportunities, really looking at what education we're providing, offering thought leadership, and all of these actions will stem from an individual. but collectively, that could really help to balance the gender narrative overall and really promote the empowerment of women. So looking at positive role models and drawing attention to women working in the industry, as Shan, you were saying, really inspiring graduates, but as well as the wider population. So just quickly before I hand back to you, Jamelia, I would like to thank all the panelists individually today, Your Excellency, and also our esteemed guests. We were really honoured to hear all of your experiences, Rahmad. And also thank you so much to the British Council for this opportunity, and to all of you in the audience who have attended today. I'd just like to say a quick reminder that if you haven't already done so, please complete the evaluation form, which should be in the link here. Jamelia, I'll pass back to you to conclude the session with action points going forwards.
Yes, thank you very much, Natasha, and thank you, everyone. I think this has been a very, very useful discussion, and the success of it is partly due to the fact that we did a lot to prepare with all of you to unpack all the issues, to unpack all the questions, and to then to structure the conversation so that we address major points and major issues today. But of course, it's not the end of the discussion, it's just the beginning of it, and we will carry on talking about things that matter to all of us. And one of the first action points is that the recording of this webinar will be available, and we will share it with you, so we capture all the discussions and all the valuable input of all the colleagues today in the call. Also, we are continuing running this series of events, and the next one will be as part of the Creative Spark partnership between Goldsmiths and Institute of Art and Culture on the 12th of March, and Shan will be taking part in that, but we invite all of you to join our discussion. We will be talking about leadership and women empowerment, and this is one of the most important themes for women and girls today. Also, we will be collating some useful information for participants of our discussion today and project teams around Asina Swan program, around women enterprise in Scotland, and I'm sure Dilarom Husnudin will be interested to hear more about what is being done at parliamentary or interparliamentary level in the UK, in Scotland in particular. Also, we will be getting some samples or examples of curriculum and some screening documents that were mentioned, so that we provide all the useful information for our project teams. So we incorporate and embed equality and diversity and women empowerment and girls education into all the work that we are doing as part of our higher education program. So thank you very much, everyone, for a fantastic session today, and see you later.